Meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. Can we have a roll call, please?
Agency members: Draymond.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chair Friedman.
Here. Can we have your report, please?
The agenda for the November 30th, 2010 regular meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Wednesday, November 24th, 2010 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. What's next, please?
Next is approval of minutes.
So moved. Second.
Okay, I will abstain from the minutes of which I was absent. And the minutes are approved. What's next, please?
Next is oral communications. No cards were submitted for oral communications.
And next.
On the business agenda at 6A is Director of Community Planning and Community Redevelopment and Housing regarding owner participation proposals for 123 West Colorado Street and 230 South Orange Street. At 6A1 is motion adopting the guiding principles for redevelopment of the properties and providing direction to staff on the desired next steps.
Thank you. Who are we going to for the staff report?
We'll go to Phil Lanzafame.
Okay, Mr. Lansing.
As Chair, members of the Redevelopment Agency, California state law provides for owner participation in the redevelopment of project areas, and as such, the City of Glendale has adopted its own guidelines. Our guidelines allow property owners to propose some redevelopment to the City Council, to the Redevelopment Agency, I should say, whether it be their own property or properties adjacent to them. Based on these proposals, we've received, or based on these guidelines, we've received a proposal from Crusoe Affiliated to create and develop between 60 and 140,000 square feet of retail expansion of the Americana brand on two parcels adjacent to that development, 123 West Colorado and 230 South Orange Street. These are the Golden Key Hotel and former recording studio, respectively. The architecture as submitted in the proposal to us would be consistent with the Americana. It would widen Colorado Street to allow that third lane of through traffic. The development would also add new street lights and landscaping, making a portion of Crusoe Avenue pedestrian only with some landscape plaza and fountain area. Then also, pending the final design, create some pedestrian space connecting what is now Orange Street to Colorado. In terms of this proposal, you have really three options in front of you. You could do nothing and thank Crusoe Affiliated for the idea. You could issue requests for proposals from a larger development community, or you could limit those requests for proposals from the three property owners that own property in this area. In any case, if you go out to a larger development community, you would also invite the property owners to submit a proposal, either a competing proposal or something different to develop their own property. We believe, staff believes, that the project site is prime for new investment and redevelopment. These are two of the remaining sites that have not been redeveloped in the downtown. And we think that if the agency is interested in getting proposals, whether they be from a larger development community or from the three owners, that you adopt certain guiding principles. We've outlined them in the staff report for you. They are generally that projects be economically viable and provide some kind of revenue generation, that they are sensitive to the existing character and scale, that they that the uses and design is supportive of a pedestrian experience, and that they promote flexibility of movement through streets and passageways. A lot of these are currently found in our downtown specific plan and have been mirrored here so that we continue that same development principle throughout. Again, the options that you have before you are take no action, say thank you, but we're not interested, to go through an RFQ, RFP process with a wider development community, or to simply ask the three property owners to submit proposals either for their own site or for the entire project site that is proposed. Staff, depending on the direction you want to go, staff could have these prepared, these packets prepared and requests ready to go out within the next week or so. If you would like to see the packet come back to you, we could try and do that by mid-December. With that, staff is here. I believe the property owners are all represented, and if you have any questions, be happy to answer those for you.
Okay, I'm going to go first to questions from the agency, then to the public, and then back for comments from the agency. So are there any questions? Seeing none, I will go to the public. My first card is Larry Zarian.
Madam Chair, how many minutes?
3.
10 minutes. Only 3 minutes, Larry. Madam Chair, members of the agency, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Mr. Starbird, and everyone at the dais, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here today. I decided at the last moment to come before you to share some of my thoughts. I'm not here to represent the developer or Mr. Caruso or the property owners. I'm here as a citizen of the City of Glendale. I think I know a little bit about the property that we're talking about. I was here when it was a vacant piece of property. I was on the agency, chair of the agency as a former mayor, and on the city council. I have a history of what this property is all about. When the Americana was developed, I thought it would have been appropriate to make sure that the motor hotel was gone, and also the other piece of property. Well, it did not happen. We can't go back. Why am I here? I believe that I look at this piece of property as what is good for the City of Glendale. Everything I do, I look at what is best for the City of Glendale and how is it going to benefit the citizens of the City of Glendale, and that to me is very important. I believe the time has come that not only the agency and everyone that's involved to make a decision. Are we going to develop that piece of property and make it all one, or are we going to let it sit there and let the property prices rise and do what happens? As a property owner in the City of Glendale and elsewhere, I know when I sell my property, I want the most for my property. I want every dime that I can get. And as a buyer, you end up wanting to pay the very least amount of money on every piece of property. In my case, and I think, and I know in your case, we need to look at this as this project. What is good for the City of Glendale? The Americana has been a boon for the city. It has put Glendale again on the map. A lot of people that I talk to say to me, I have not been at the Americana, but I'm going to come. And that's the beauty of a project of this sort. And I believe the time has come that the property owners, the buyer and the seller, sit down and say, what's good for the City of Glendale? And then obviously, again, not to be redundant, the buyer is not going to pay every dime, and the seller wants to get every dime. So I think there's going to be appraisals. But the bottom line is that I think that those two pieces of property do not belong in the Americana. It just makes the Americana complete. And I think that is what we ought to look at and look at the future of this. My only interest is what is for the City of Glendale. And again, I hope you make the right decision, and I know you will. And the future of this piece of property and how it looks like and what it looks like is in your hands, and how you do and what you do with it. And I'm hoping that you'll do the very best, and I think it is important that we complete this piece of property. Again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come before you and talk to you. And thanks again. I hope you make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zarian. Leanne Reynolds, please.
Hello, good afternoon. I am Leanne Reynolds, and I'm speaking on behalf of, as a resident here in the City of Glendale. I'm also in support of this continued development surrounding the Americana, specifically by Mr. Caruso. I've lived here for 10 years, and it wasn't until the Americana was completed that I saw a true central community gathering location for all the residents in the city. My family and my friends have so enjoyed the orchestra performances and ongoing special events that take place at the Americana. I'm also a realtor here in the city, and I've seen firsthand the positive influence the Americana has had from those out-of-area buyers looking to purchase a home in our city. We're really undergoing a renaissance. You read that all the time in the newspaper. The empty property and the dated hotel nearby the Americana, in my opinion, certainly don't contribute or fit in with the new retail and dining experiences that we all have at the Americana. I believe we should be proud of this developer, Mr. Caruso, in his commitment and financial resources and marketing talents that he's given us in Glendale. And any additional space that he can acquire will only further enhance what's been successfully started. So thank you for considering this important continued development by a successful developer. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Conroy, followed by Golden Key by Ray Patel.
Good afternoon, council members. I want to speak as a resident of the Excelsior condominiums at the Americana at Brand.
Can you please just state your name for the record?
It's Tim Conroy. We have lived there since the beginning of the Excelsior being available for homeowners. We were the second people to move in, my wife and I. We decided to buy a home at the Excelsior because the Americana was a wonderful experience for us, as it is for many other residents in Glendale. The whole ambiance, the culture of the place, the beauty of it, it was very impressive to us. We're also realtors, and we know what it means to increase value and add value. So my primary comment would be the motel and the brick building that was used to be a production studio, I guess, do not add value to that property or to that area. They're really quite underwhelming when you experience them. What would make a better situation would be an extension of what's already there, and we trust Rick Caruso and his organization, his people. We've met many of the people involved in developing the Americana at Brand in the course of our being members of the community there, and we've been impressed by everyone. They not only over-deliver, but they really, truly give us a unique experience for living in the city. And as an attraction, as a place other people would want to come, I can speak from coming from Minnesota in 1984. I've lived in Glendale since 1987. And when I first came to Glendale, back in those days, downtown Glendale was lacking. It didn't have what it has today. Now, when you walk through the Americana at Brand and you're walking someone through our hometown, our little village at the Americana, we can be proud of it because it is an extraordinary facility and an extraordinary experience. So I encourage you to open up the process. Please make a difference by enabling some change to occur with those buildings so that what is there will be equal to what is surrounding those spaces. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ray Patel.
Good afternoon. I'm Ray Patel, the owner of the Golden Key, formerly the Best Western Golden Key Motor Hotel. Come March of next year, it'll be 10 years since I've owned the hotel, and this seems like another hurdle. The developer is asking for eminent domain action, and I've never even talked to him about selling the hotel. I know he's gone on record on 2 occasions, said he's offered me a price or something like that. That's never happened. He said the same thing back in 2005 in the Daily News. Never occurred. Nonetheless, we've weathered the storm during the public input era of designing this project, and the only time I last spoke with him was when we agreed to put no loading or trash on Orange Street, and then he breached that agreement. It's going to trial next year to address that. But what I'm here to say is the Golden Key Hotel is not a blighted hotel. And during the construction phase, yes, there was a lot of dust and negative impact to the hotel. But the staff and I, we've weathered 2 storms. We're looking forward to 2011 to grow the business. We're looking to add a gym, larger breakfast lounge, business center. We've signed all our contracts with corporate travel agencies. They're coming back. And we just like to prosper in this business-friendly city of Glendale. And I think this is just another obstacle that I have to address now. And I appreciate all the public comments, and a lot of them look familiar from the past comments that they've made on behalf of the developer when this was in the design stage. So I'm sure everybody's happy to see the Americana and how great it looks. But, it's a great project. But now it's time to just let the people that are left there, which is my hotel, prosper and succeed. And we are a mid-market hotel. There is a need for mid-market hotels in Glendale. Brings corporate clients that aren't interested in paying $200-300 a night, maybe at the higher-end hotels, and so they go to the adjacent cities. So they're staying in Glendale, and I think they contribute to the economy in Glendale as well as the hotel does too. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony Maniscolci.
Thank you, Madam Chair, agency members, members of council, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon. I'm Tony Maniscalchi, a third-generation resident, property owner, and a business owner. Most of you know my commitment to real estate, not only from a planning and zoning point of view, but from a property rights point of view. It's hard to believe that nearly 10 years ago, we embarked on a journey to create what is now the Americana. I was and continue to be an enthusiastic supporter of this project, and I have and I continue to visit its sister projects, the Grove, Promenade, and the Commons. We have witnessed not only a project that is everything the owners have promised, but an organization that has demonstrated a commitment to the entire city. The leadership of the Americana has woven themselves into the fabric of our lives. The orchestra, the college, the arts, the schools, even the trademarked trolley that takes laps around our downtown. For me, and I hope for many of us, we witness the quality and delivery of service and commitment. And when we do, we usually want more. I want to foster the success and leverage the Americana into a greater experience. I encourage your leadership and vision to move the Americana and our city to the next level. Whether we square it off, expand it, let's talk about how we make this success grow. Just like there was Galleria 1, and there was Galleria 2, there was discussions of Galleria 3. There's Allstate Plaza, which started out as 700 North Central, 701 North Brand, 801 North Brand. It's really the completion of the total project that I look at. More retail, more entertainment, more public places, all for the improvement of our city and our citizens. I remain confident that as you take action, we will witness others take action to approve, revise, or redevelop other sites. I don't have to look too far outside the boundaries of the Americana of certain key buildings that I would love to see something occur. One's pretty tall right across the street. Needless to say, my family and I are big supporters of the Americana, and I simply want more choice. While I am not a retail specialist, I go out almost every day and would be interested in working on the right strategy for the Americana's expansion. The first step would be to allow the Caruso ownership of the abandoned building on Orange and to push the motel owner into submitting their intention or plans to develop sometime in January. Hopefully we can act quickly to promote early and be all in a position to take advantage of our economic recovery. Thank you.
Thank you. Carl Raggio.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the council and staff. I'm not going to have anything to say that might be much different than what my predecessors did, in that I'm here because I favor what the Americana has been, what it is, and what it will be. And I'm looking forward to that time when it's complete. And so consequently, it's in your hands to do that. But one thing I want to remind you of is that Glendale's quality of life is pretty much contingent upon the way we treat our businesses within the city. Ever since Proposition 13, we've been in the position of trying to catch up. And the thing that added to our quality of life happened to be the businesses. Business such as Americana. Americana is a present and a future. I go down there and I see young people. And of course, everybody to me is young now. So as a consequence, I see a lot of young people. But we take our grandchildren, and they're the young people who reflect that down there. They enjoy themselves, and they're completely at home with something like this. I can only encourage you to extend that, to, in one way or another, encourage a meeting of the minds with respect to the other property owners and how they can, in one way or another, see fit to allow the Americana to be completed. So I'm encouraging you to take a hard look at what your decision is going to be and then favor it in those for us in Glendale. Again, I thank you, and I wish you luck.
Carl, your name for the record?
Carl Raggio,
Thank you.
Thanks. Yes,
Glendale citizen.
If everybody who comes up to speak can state their name for the record before they start speaking, that would be helpful. Next is Mary Lorario, and after that will be Nicole Wilkinson.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Catherine Lauriero. I'm here as a resident. I've lived here for approximately 13 years, and my husband grew up here. We love living in Glendale. We think Glendale has so much to offer, but it does have a tiny bit of an image problem, or had before the Americana came along. I meet a lot of people consistently from the West Side and from Pasadena. And in the past, whenever chit-chat would come up and people would say, so where are you from, where do you live? And I'd say Glendale, I would see a fleeting little look in their eyes, quickly concealed for courtesy's sake, but it would be there, and that look would say, why? And I used to try to start extolling the virtues of our fair city, but it got a little tiresome because it had to be done all the time. But the remarkable thing is that, from my observation, consistently, ever since the opening of the Americana 2.5 years ago, I don't get those looks anymore. I get really positive comments, such as, oh, that's where the Americana is, isn't it? Oh, I've been there. I love it. That's so beautiful. Oh, that's the Second Grove, right? And even people who haven't been there say, oh, I've heard such great things about it. I've seen pictures of it. It's so beautiful. I always mean to go there. So, broadly speaking, I've observed so much more positive feedback regarding Glendale in general from people who don't know Glendale ever since the Americana opened. And I think we can all attribute it to Crusoe Affiliated. They single-handedly changed the image of our city. And I think that image has a way of making people come and spend more money. So even though the revenue from the Americana is already established fact, I won't even go into that, but I think it all ties together. And my husband and I both are in favor of expansion. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Nicole Wilkinson, followed by Jerry Cragnati.
My name is Nicole Wilkinson. I'm here on behalf of MPG Office Trust, a Southern California-based real estate investment trust and Glendale property owner and operator. We have 4 buildings in Glendale, and we support the further expansion of the Americana. That's it.
Okay, short and sweet. Thank you. Jerry Cragnati, followed by Richard Leboff.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the agency and City Council and staff that are here. My name is Jerry Cragnati. Yes, I am one of the old familiar faces that speak for the developer. As a real estate broker for the last 37 years, realtor and broker for the last 37 years, I don't believe there's any field, any business that is more in touch with the residents of a community than a real estate agent. And over the years, you find out why people think they're going to move, where they hang out, and what they like to do. And prior to the Americana and the Town Center project, which it was originally called, Glendale was not visited downtown by its residents, nor did they invite their friends to meet them at a Glendale restaurant or movie. So that's why I'm still here. I first became aware of the Town Center 10 years ago when, as a member of a realtor committee, I was asked to monitor downtown projects down here in Glendale. I had never heard of Rick Caruso, and more ridiculously, I had never heard of the Grove, which was already up and running quite successfully. As I heard more about the project, I went and visited the Grove, and frankly, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe this developer was selecting Glendale. I would bring some of my neighbors back to the Grove who hadn't been, and we would be giddy, standing there by the fountain going, can you believe this is coming to Glendale? So the Americana has more than fulfilled its promises. It's more than promises stated and promises kept. Its expectations fulfilled beyond even our, I believe, Glendale's highest expectations. The developer delivers, and he delivers over and above what he even says and puts on paper. We have never been disappointed by Rick Caruso. And Council Member Friedman, you weren't on the whole foray of the council and the Americana, but you did get to observe it as a private resident and watch it unfold. You announced your candidacy at the Americana, and I think now, as a member of council, you see the benefits the Americana has brought to our community. I urge you all to vote and think about completing our Americana. That will bring more interesting retail to Glendale, and more importantly, for me and for our residents, it will improve and save our image as a forward-thinking city. Some people actually think of us that way now, and I don't think they thought of us that way before. So I think it's really had a multifaceted impact on our city. Please get this done now and without delay, and please bring something back by mid-January so we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Leboff, followed by Henry David.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Friedman, Mayor Najarian, other council members, City Manager Starbird, and other city staff. I am Richard Leboff, a 31-year resident of the jewel city of Glendale, and I, like my previous speakers here, would agree with all that has been said. Glendale has truly been put on the map as a result of the Americana at Brand. Rick Caruso, of course, has been said, and I would wholeheartedly concur, has delivered on all of his promises and more. What we still see in that area of our great city is still a blighted area. I don't think any of us here sitting here today can deny that the street orange, the hotel, motel, whatever you want to call it, is not the most attractive part of our city, as is the south part of Colorado Boulevard, south of the Americana, and the east side of Brand Boulevard. We know these areas all need redevelopment. One of the wonderful things that Rick Caruso brought to us, as he did with the Grove, is he brings about a synergy in an area, and that's what we need here in Glendale. If we are to grow as a city, then we need further development. If we are to have more apartments, condos, lofts, what have you, there's a need to create that synergy, and it's begun, but we must keep the momentum going. So I, like previous speakers, would support Rick Caruso's desire to improve that area, and hopefully we will see these other areas develop as well. One of the things I'd like to also note in closing is that, in talking to people who live throughout the Los Angeles basin, I would bet you that if you took a vote as to what they thought to be the third largest city in Los Angeles County, they would never say Glendale. We all know which city they would probably say that begins with a P. It's a shame that as we brand Glendale, that we don't promote that we are, in fact, the third largest city. So something needs to be done along those lines, too, because, people don't see us as they do our neighboring city of Pasadena. With that, I would thank you, and I hope this process moves forward as fast as can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Henry David, followed by Rick Caruso. And if there's anybody else who wanted to speak, please turn a card in right away. Thanks.
Yes, I'm Henry David, and my family owns the property at 230 South Orange, the former recording studio. And I have a letter from my attorney that I'd like to get distributed. We have an owner participation agreement that we negotiated with the city a long time ago, and as far as I'm aware, it's still intact. We've been impacted tremendously by the construction of the Americana. We were basically, or our tenant was basically put out of business for 3 years while the construction was going on. And I understand he's got a lawsuit against the city right now. I have not filed any actions against the city in the past. I want to see the city develop, and I have basically no problem with seeing this project proceed. My only concern is that we're treated fairly, and I think that that has to be primary. So anyhow, that's it. If you have any questions, I'm available. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick Caruso?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today and for your time to consider our proposal, or at least to discuss it. As you know, for almost a decade, we have worked closely with the City of Glendale and its redevelopment agency to improve downtown Glendale area. You have given me and my company back in 2001 a great opportunity, and for that I am forever grateful. Now we would like to expand on the success of the Americana. And as has been spoken before, the Americana was built around two key properties. One, the hotel, and the other, the now vacant brick building. And as the adjacent owner, we obviously have significant interest in the redevelopment of these two parcels. And our goal is the same as the city, to eliminate the blight and revitalize the central Glendale area. So our hope is that it's time to move forward and bring in some new business, some new revenue, create some new jobs, and continue to energize downtown. The project that we would propose is approximately 60 to 140,000 square feet. We project that it will create about $80 million in annual sales, converting that into about $800,000 each year in revenue for the City of Glendale. Along with that, create hundreds of new construction jobs and new long-term jobs. We expect to invest tens of millions of dollars in this project, and we know that throughout Los Angeles County, including Glendale, projects have stalled. We're excited about the opportunity to kick off, hopefully, some better years ahead of us with a new project. This is not contingent on financing. The capital is at hand. We want to work with you, the City of Glendale, its staff, to create a process based on four principles. First, the project will be accomplished at no cost to the taxpayers. Second, we're committed to reaching a fair resolution with the existing property owners, and if we do not come to an agreement, we are also very open to a fair process to determine fair value for the property. We want to begin working with the hotel employees at their choice to protect their interest and their jobs throughout this process. And we are determined to build a project in a way that enhances the Glendale economic base for the benefit of its taxpayers. Now, I am confident, as I was when we first proposed the Americana brand, that we're going to build on the great success that the Americana has had and provide great benefits to the neighboring community and the city as a whole. And let me conclude by saying that I believe in Glendale. I believed in it in 2001 when we were selected as the developer. As you recall, we went through a fight or two in order to get this project built, but we never gave up. I continue to believe in it now, and I want to double down. We see a great future for the success of Glendale and its downtown, and we want to continue to participate in that success. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I'll go back to the agency for comments or questions. Who would like to begin? Mr. Weaver.
I'll comment. My history, since I'm a senior council member, goes back to '97 when Donahue Shriver, who owned the Galleria, was proposing to develop the now Americana site. And as I recall, when we saw the plans that they laid out, it incorporated the entire area. We're talking about including the Golden Key area and the studio area. Even then, we're talking about the full development, and that was Donahue Shriver doing it. When they eventually left and we awarded Rick Caruso the opportunity to do it, I was surprised that we were not able to include these two areas into the project. It just seems like there's a hole in the project area. And I think the area is underutilized and should be developed by someone. I'm perfectly willing to let the Golden Key and the studio put in their plans for redevelopment of that area, along with Rick Caruso. We'll judge who can best develop that area. It would seem initially or realistically that Mr. Caruso, who controls the remainder of the site, could most easily adapt to that area and develop it, making it a cohesive project. So I think we have to move ahead with it and get it built. It's an economic engine to the city again, more people to work. It closes off an area to the south that I think really should be incorporated into the project for many reasons, including safety. So whenever on a motion, I'll make it. Thank you.
Let me go to the rest of the agency first. Mr. Najarian.
Thank you. I think we do need to move forward and complete the block. The Americana really, I think, has surpassed anyone's expectations, except maybe perhaps Mr. Caruso's, as to what could be done there. This city was in pitched battle prior to the city council at that time. I was not a member of that council then, agreeing to permit Mr. Caruso to develop. And what he produced and what he built and what he continues to provide the city, I think, surpasses really anyone's expectations, from the community parties he holds, whether it's during Easter season or during the holiday season, concerts, the farmers markets that he promotes, the trolley down Brand Boulevard. This is certainly never included in any of the operating agreements and contracts that we signed with him. He did that because he knew it would be good not only for the Americana but for the entire city. And it does bring people up and down Brand Boulevard during lunch times, weather permitting. I think it's getting a little bit chilly right now. People are staying off the open air trolley. But what we do have is a dynamic retail lifestyle center that is it's stopped short of its full potential, and that full potential, I think, would require the city to look for a redevelopment of the Best Western, the former Best Western, the Golden Key Motel, and the former recording studio. It's only a natural extension of the excitement and the energy that is developed in the Americana. I don't think we're losing much, with all due respect to Mr. Patel, the small business owner. I don't think we're losing much as a city if we have to forego the continued use of a how do you put it, a mid-priced motel. It just doesn't fit. There are places for those types of establishments. It doesn't work right at the cornerstone and the heart of Glendale's energy and excitement. I would like to see the affected property owners that do have a stake in the redevelopment here be permitted to submit their applications. I'd like that to be done sooner rather than later. I think the more we delay things, the more risk we take. So I don't know if there's a timeline involved in setting a period. You can maybe fill us in on that later, but I'd like to see it done 45 days at the most. And I would invite Mr. Patel, I would invite Mr. David and his family ownership of the recording studio, and Mr. Caruso to put their best projects forward, and we'll judge them all at that rate. The losers, if you will, I don't think there are any losers. What it's going to mean is that you're going to be paid a fair price for your property. That fair price can be either negotiated at arm's length with the city, or it can be negotiated in the court of law by a Superior Court judge, listening to all the evidence and facts that you have as to the value of your property, and then having him make a determination. And I would dare say that the development of the Americana in your backyard certainly increases the value that you hold in that property. So I would very much like to support the option which would permit the stakeholder, property owners, to permit a submission of any projects, and that to be done within a fairly short period of time. 45 days would put us, mid-January, I think, would be a reasonable timeline. And the winners in this are the residents of Glendale. We're going to expand the very core, and every speaker before talked about that excitement, that spark, that pride that we have now in Glendale. We're not ashamed to say, yeah, I live in Glendale. Say, yeah, Glendale, the Americana. Maybe you heard the fireworks during the Christmas tree lighting, or maybe you've seen the concerts or seen extra filmed there, or, it goes on and on. The promotion is really magnificent. So I would fully support pursuing that line of action at this point. Thank you.
Go back to Mr. Weaver.
I just wanted to add on, I forgot about timeline. I wouldn't want to see anything over the holidays. Pushing it into mid-January is the only thing that makes reasonable sense to me. It doesn't add on to what one speaker said. When you have guests come to Glendale, friends come to Glendale in past years, you had to take them to Forest Lawn. That's about all we had to show for Glendale. So we've come a long way.
Future resting place of the greatest mayor Glendale City ever saw.
Well, thank you. I already have my plot there. You know another one? I'll join Walt Disney down there.
Okay. Other comments?
A motion?
I support option 2, which is to go out for RFPs. I think the 2 parcels need to be redeveloped.
Option 2?
On our the RFP process, not RFQ, but RFP.
That to a larger development community.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Draymond.
Well, just for the record, I also was not here for that brawl, the civic brawl over to town center or not to town center. But I find myself, I think of myself as fortunate anyhow, because by the time I took a seat on this council, I was here in time. In fact, had the opportunity to be mayor in time to witness the opening of the Americana at Brand, and that was quite an experience for me. In a certain way, I felt a little bit like a fish out of water. My colleagues on one side of the issue or not had a lot to say about the development of that project, and I really had not. But here I was serving as mayor when it opened. But I think that anybody who is looking at this fairly knows, not just comes to the conclusion, but knows that Americana has been a huge benefit to our downtown. And to the extent that on the opening day there, when it came my turn to say something to the public, I was quoting actually Mr. Caruso because I thought it was such a great line. This city, mayors, current, past, had envisioned a town center, and what we actually received was something at the center of our town, and that's the Americana. To see it expand successfully, I think, is important. And I don't think anybody disagrees with that. I think the question is about the interests of the other property owners, and that's the only fine point that concerns me at this point. Mr. David, and I've spoken to Mr. David in the past about his site and his interests there. And what I'm hearing from him is that he doesn't object to the proposed expansion of Americana as long as his interests, the interests of his family, are treated properly, and I assume that equates to an economic treatment as well. And And then we've also heard from Mr. Patel, and I just want to be clear, Mr. Patel, and I've spoken to you over the years on several occasions. From what we heard today, it sounds like under no circumstances are you interested in selling the property. Am I correct on that? And I would indulge the chair if I may
Mr.
ask.
Patel, would you mind coming back
If you
up?
care to answer, I understand. I'm not trying to get you to divulge any strategies or secrets, but
like I addressed all of you is the fact that a statement was made that Mr. Caruso had made an offer to me. We've never had a conversation since 2005 together at all. As far as selling the property, I'm open to an offer, and no one's made one to me yet.
Okay.
But I definitely, like I said, don't feel like I should be bullied into anything.
All right. Thank you for kind of letting me put you on the record, because I didn't hear any of that when you spoke before, and I wanted to make sure that there was a willingness to. I also want to say I may disagree with some of my colleagues. I don't view these as blighted properties, or as I heard Mr. David's property referred to as an abandoned property. It's not an abandoned property. And I think we need to be careful how we use language sometimes. But in any case, I didn't hear those terms being used by Mr. Caruso. I heard those terms being used by others who were speaking here. I don't view the hotel the motel as a blighted property with window shutters askew and tumbleweeds rolling across the property and graffiti all over it. It may be that, just as Mr. Weaver has said, our city has evolved in a way and at a time when we need to think about what we have there. It's now the center of town. And is this the use that best suits that? And I think the answer is probably no. So to the extent that our property owners are interested in selling their properties and the Americana next door is interested in expanding, and certainly the public seems to support that. I support it too. I would ask that I would support option number 3, which is allowing the property owners, if they so desire, to go forward, make their proposals, as to what to do with the property, and we move on from there. As to the timeline, I've heard that from almost every speaker. It's a little curious to me, Mr. Lanzafame, can you elaborate on the seemingly coincidental discussion about timeline from almost every speaker that's come forward? You don't have to characterize their comments. Just what's the import on the timeline?
I can't elaborate on their characterization. Certainly, if these principles, if you're comfortable with these principles, we could have the packet, if you will, out the door within a few days. And then 45 days or so to mid-January, we could have those responses back, evaluate them, and bring it back to you.
And what would be the advantage of, say, mid-January versus December or versus June? I mean, what's the... I think you understand my question. What's the burning issue here, Mr. Lanzafame, just so I can wrap my head around it, and anybody looking in can as well?
My guess is there is some momentum, and want to maintain that. Rather than have it drag out, we would be able to have a direction and move forward. It shouldn't take more than 30 days or so to put together the type of proposal that would allow you to react to these principles, that will allow you to decide. Certainly, we will take whatever time you want.
Mr. Starbird?
Yeah, let me elaborate. It seems to me it's balancing the interest of being fair to the existing property owners, giving them enough time that they can submit a reasonable proposal, which will take them some time, and also being responsive to the individual who's initiated this, which is Mr. Caruso, who wants to see it move along in a timely fashion. And it's really balancing those two interests. We think that can be reasonably accommodated with a return within, say, 30 or 45 days. So that would put us probably in first part of January. If you'd like to see the actual RFPs come back, We think we can accomplish that by your last meeting in December, which would be the 14th. If you're comfortable with the principles and with allowing staff to develop the requests for proposals and then go ahead and release them without them first coming back to you for approval, that'll cut a little bit of time off of that margin. But it's just a balancing between being fair to all the property owners and wanting to move this process along as Mr. Crusoe's requested.
Thank you for very upfront about that. One last indulgence, Madam Chair. I see one of the property owners with his hand up, and I'd like to say to me in that regard about the timeline.
If it's a brief comment, come back up and you can state your name again for the record.
Yeah, Henry David. I think that 45 days is not nearly enough time to put together an alternate proposal. The month of December is not a month that anything is going to get accomplished. And to put a real project together, I think 180 days is more like it. So that's my comment. I think 45 days. I think Mr. Caruso certainly has already designed what he wants to do. And so putting something, to compete with that in a very short order is not a possibility. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing.
Then
wait, Mr. Draymond, were you finished with your comments?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Weaver.
the question, how complex a presentation do they have to make in 45 days? It's not development plans and all that, right?
No, it isn't. It's more conceptual with some bit of financial to it to ensure that it's something that's viable. But it is not detailed drawings and elevations, more of a narrative description.
As David said, 180 days. What's realistic? We've talked about 45 days or something rather than 30 because of the holidays, naturally, but you say that's reasonable. I don't know the complexity of the submittal.
Raymond?
Yeah, my reason for asking is also to clarify. I'm not necessarily sure that even the property owners. I think it's a very good question, Mr. Weaver. What exactly is expected within that time frame? And we're not talking about the requirement. We're not looking at drawings or anything other than conceptual. Correct? Is that correct?
Chair, members of the agency, excuse me, I have laryngitis, but I'll attempt to answer that question. What we would also be looking at if it were owner participation would be the potential financial viability of the project. So the submitters would be putting together a financial pro forma that would establish in sufficient detail for you to know and be able to determination that proposal is in fact financially viable, something along the lines of the typical pro formas that we see that flesh out the financial components.
So they wouldn't need to have architectural plans, that sort of thing that are more time intensive.
No, as Mr. Lanzafame correctly stated, we are looking at a concept that would fit within the site as proposed, fulfilling the guiding principles as you've set forth. Mr. Starbird.
But if I can add along with that enough information so that when you chose one of the options to move forward with, one of the proposals to move forward with, you'd have some reasonable certainty that they can deliver on what it is they have proposed to do. So to that extent, you don't need a complete design, you don't necessarily need to know every little detail of it, but you'd want them to back up their proposal with how it is they're going to be able to carry it out, what kinds of financing and guarantees they can give you, so you have some comfort that when they're chosen and the other two go away, they'll be able to bring whatever it is they propose and you've chosen to fruition.
Other comments? I'll make my comments. I agree with a lot of what was said. I want to add that I think it's a very interesting time and an exciting time for Glendale. Yesterday's newspaper talked about, well, I'm not sure which newspaper was when, but one of the Glendale News Press newspapers talked about the Laemmle Theater wanting to move to Glendale. And then the other day's newspaper talked about Mr. Caruso wanting to expand the Americana. And this is at a time when cities all around the country and cities around us in the Southland are in really desperate financial shape, with businesses closing, with areas that were thriving becoming blighted. And we have a downtown that's kind of become the it place for this region. And I think that's a really wonderful thing to be happening. I am reassured hearing the property owners being willing to sell their properties for the right price, that they're not saying, no, this was my family's homestead and I'm never going to leave. It's not that kind of situation. It's important that they are fairly compensated and that everybody walks away feeling like they, at least were treated fairly. So we'll do whatever we can to make sure that that happens. In terms of the timeline, I think 180 days, as one of the property owners suggested, is really too long. I don't know if there's a time beyond 45 days that makes sense. I know it will take time to put something together. The question is how much time. So I would ask staff who's been in this position before, who's seen these kinds of projects put together, what they believe is a reasonable amount of time that wouldn't keep this sort of going on and, for an unreasonable amount of time, but would give the property owners enough time to take a look at what their options are and to come in with reasonable proposals. Mr. Starbird, you've been involved in redevelopment for a very long time. What is your sense?
You're on the.
I think she's saying you're a project in the works.
From this redevelopment dinosaur, let me give you my opinion. I think it's part a legal question and part a practical question about how long it takes. I think the point about there being the holidays is a very good one. The reality is, if we have this out by December, sometime before December 14, you're going to have maybe a week of productivity, but then you have potentially January. My guess would be if you can have 45 to 60 working days, you can certainly come up with what you think the concept of your proposal is and enough supporting financial information to give you some comfort that they can deliver on whatever it is they're proposing. If that goes out by mid-December, then I think you're probably looking at the earliest late January, mid-February, if you're giving 60 days for somebody to respond. It seems to me you've certainly erred on the side of being reasonable.
And if the property owners were able to come in with proposals before then, would we be able to agendize it to speed the process along?
Well, certainly could. I mean, once we have if you limit this to option 3, which is the 3 landowner participants, then certainly once we have the 3 proposals, we can agendize it and bring it into you.
Okay, well, yes.
I'd like to comment. Obviously, Mr. Caruso knows how many square feet, approximate cost. He has all that done. I suggest the other 2 who have said, justly compensated, willing to consider selling. Okay? Unless those 2 have definite plans for building in that site, have thought about it, and know what they want to build there, why would you want to get totally involved with the concept? Putting the drawings together, contacting different companies that would move into the site. How would you integrate it along with the Americana for parking and everything else? It could be a lot of work. So if you want to compete, do you honestly feel that you're capable of it, that you have the people you can bring on board to make it all happen? As I said, obviously, Mr. Caruso does know already what he plans to do. He's the one that initiated this.
Mr. Starbird?
I think you have to be careful to afford all of the property owners an adequate time, in all fairness, to give you a proposal.
Right.
They may choose to have conversations about sale. I think you'd want to have some time, if indeed that's their choice. They'd be able to flesh that out to see if they want to participate or if they want to sell. It still seems to me that given the holidays, of 45 to 60 days is certainly a reasonable time to do that. And that's assuming you're comfortable with us basing a request for proposals on the principles and wouldn't necessarily have to come back and re-agendize that for discussion.
Well, this is not really the first time this issue was brought up. We had to amend the downtown specific plan several months ago, did we not? When was that, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, 5 months ago? So I think clearly anyone paying attention should have realized that something like this was in the works and that the council was clearly moving in that particular direction. I just don't want to delay this. I mean, unfortunately, there was a delay in the initial development of the Americana, and look what happened. Situations changed, and I think it was to the detriment of both the city and to the business owners in there. I encourage the current property owners, all three of them, to sit down and have a serious discussion as to whether they'd like to sell any of their properties. Maybe someone wants to buy out Mr. Caruso. Maybe Mr. Caruso can make a fair offer and favorable offer to any of the other two gentlemen. That's your choice. Either come to a arm's length agreement, submit a proposal that is going to meet the criteria that we've set forth. And these are not loose criteria. I mean, these are fairly straightforward as to what we as a city council are going to expect. And I think it's fair to say that the bar that we've set is much higher than it has ever been in the city of Glendale due to what we're currently developing and what we currently have in the downtown area. Or sit tight and let a Superior Court judge determine a fair value for your property. So I don't see why 60, 90, 120 days are even in there. I mean, if you're serious about it, let's get down to it, submit something to our staff, and if there's... my concern is that we set this so far out, nothing gets turned in, or no serious proposals get turned in, and we've wasted all that time. If they're serious, submit something. If they need more time, if staff says we need a little more discussion, then maybe we can extend that. Do we have the power to extend that?
Yes.
Sua sponte, on our own accord? Then I'm more comfortable doing that if there's a particular and well found need to extend it. But other than that, I honestly don't think that any of the property owners, Mr. Patel or Mr. David, are going to sit down and submit a proposal for this. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they'd rather, and they've indicated they'd rather receive a fair value for their property and for their investment rather than invest more and more money into what they have. And it would be, for Mr. David and Mr. Patel, it would involve expanding their property, buying additional property than they currently own.
Mr. Najarian actually made a suggestion that I was going to, which was that we stick with the 45 days but allow for an extension if the staff looks at any alternative proposal and decides that it's really something that is real and can happen and needs a little bit more time. My worry is that we extend it now and nobody's really trying to put a project together and we've extended it for no reason. So I think as long as the council is willing to take a look at a project, a serious look at any project that's in process, which I think that we all would be, then I think that we can address the concerns of the property owners, but also keep this on track. Mr. Starbird.
The other thing that could allow you to shorten up the process is if any of the participants express an interest in not participating, but frankly in allowing whatever process follows to value their property, then that could also shorten this time frame. If you have any of them who are not interested in submitting and they tell us that, then if we end up with two saying they're not interested and one is, then we can shorten that process and bring it back to you more quickly.
Jeremy, did you have your hand up?
I have my pen up at least. I think that is a very workable answer to a concern. I don't want to feel like we're shortchanging anybody, any of the property owners here. So I think the mayor's suggestion about being able to extend if the property owners decide they want to go that direction, have something in the works, and we need more time, we have that latitude. And by the same token, as the city manager just points out, if 10 days into this we discover that Mr. David and Mr. Patel are working towards some kind of arm's length deal or otherwise, we will know that too. And so that sounds like a very workable plan.
Okay.
As long as we know that we have the opportunity to extend.
Okay, so with that...
Would you like a motion now?
Yes.
I'd like to move 6A1, adopting the guiding principles of redevelopment properties and using option 3.
And in terms of timeline, do you want to make that part of your motion?
Yes, the 45-day time frame, and it's a given we have the ability to extend if we see some alternate proposals coming in that
forward
request more time.
Or shorten, extend or shorten.
Or shorten it, yes.
Madam Chair, if I can, your interest in having staff proceed to send out the RFPs based on the principles you've approved, or to bring the RFP back to you before issuing it?
Don't need to see it.
I'll second that.
Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Agency members Draymond?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Montero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Chair Friedman.
Yes. Thank you. What's next, please?
At 6B is City Attorney regarding cancellation of redevelopment agency meetings for December 21st and December 28th, 2010. B1 is motion canceling meetings.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We need a roll call?
There's
No
objection.
objection.
There's no objection. We will be dark for the holidays. What's next, please?
Next is agency member or staff comments.
Are there any comments?
I'd like to adjourn. That's a comment.
Okay, is that a motion?
Yes.
Do we have a second? Okay, we are
Madam
adjourned.
Chair, could we make one staff announcement?
Yes.
I will be very quick. I'm Minette Vartanian with the Community Redevelopment and Housing Department. I'd like to give a brief update on our Art in Vacant Storefronts program. I'm happy to announce the launch of the program with the first exhibit called Increments. The inaugural reception will be on Friday, December 10th at the Glendale City Center, located at 101 North Brand. The program and the exhibits will be located in 3 spaces, 1 on the ground floor and 2 on the second story of the property. The event is open to the public. We are actually encouraging everyone in the community to come to the reception. It'll be on Friday, December 10th from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. We are doing continued outreach with property owners so that we can expand the program into more than one property. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, but everyone who has submitted a proposal for the program has been contacted. We got over 200 submissions for the program, and we are working with the artists so that we can find a space for them. And hopefully I'll be able to come in and give you an update very shortly with additional exhibits.
Well, I'm really glad to see this project moving forward to its fruition. I want to thank staff for their hard work and also Praxis for being our consultant and putting this together. I would ask the redevelopment agency to reach out especially to the Galleria, which has not only vacancies on the exterior of their building, but also on the interior. And I don't know that we thought about putting this exhibit on the inside of the Galleria, but they have a wing of Galleria that has a lot of vacancies, and I think it would really be a benefit to them, and it would give more exposure to the artists that have been chosen. So I hope that we can put something together with them.
We will follow up with the gallery as well as the Americana.
Okay, great, thank you. But with that, we're really adjourned.